A major administrative milestone concludes. Perhaps a contract is finally signed, or a critical grant is awarded. For the initial team, the heavy lifting appears to be over. We usually define the handoff as this specific moment. The digital file is moved into a shared folder, or an official approval is checked off and passed to the next department. This transition carries an underlying assumption that by transferring responsibility for the task, we have also transferred a full understanding of the project. On paper, the process looks like a success. The milestone is reached, reinforcing the idea that work and understanding move together across the organization. Months later, leadership often discovers that the project's execution has drifted from its original goals. What was negotiated as a flexible delivery might morph into a rigid operational obligation, because the nuances of the deal never made it to the operations team. A grant's specific compliance details and original intentions can soften once they reach the programs team, leading to misalignment that finance only discovers much later. Early expectations set during a sale may fail to carry forward, leaving the service team blindsided by a customer's confusion. These disconnects rarely stem from a lack of care. They are the result of small, invisible leaks, a decision rationale that was never written down, or a constraint that lived only in one person's head. Every handoff creates a fault line, a structural gap where the original intent begins to quietly fracture. Responsibility moves instantly, context does not. An employee might receive a detailed manual, yet spend months reconstructing why decisions were made. The manual describes the technical process, but leaves out the underlying logic. Nuances obvious to the original team remain invisible across the boundary. Organizations pay for this divergence with duplicated effort, mistakes that could have been prevented, and onboarding that takes months longer than it should. If the context isn't moving with the project, we have to ask where that information is actually going. It often hides in fragmented spaces, transient conversations, personal files, and multiple versions of spreadsheets that don't talk to each other. When we rely on human memory, every retelling subtly reshapes the story. Meaning becomes negotiable, and the original intent wears away. This systemic erosion creates an organizational dependency on staff who have been with the company the longest. These employees are forced to spend their time explaining past decisions rather than executing new ones. They aren't just high performers, they have become the only remaining holders of institutional memory. We have to accept that a perfectly clean handoff is unrealistic. Some degree of information leakage will always happen during a transition. However, the size of the gap between the original intent and the eventual execution is not a fixed number. That distance is determined by the systems an organization chooses to rely on. Fragile conversations accelerate erosion, but shared systems designed to preserve context can stabilize the gap. In this state, information lives in systems that respect context. Decision rationales remain visible long after a meeting ends, and notes do not change just because a different department is reading them. History accumulates rather than dissolves. New information adds to the record instead of replacing what came before. The goal is to reduce the distance that vulnerable information has to travel without support. Ensuring a handoff happens is a simple administrative task. The more essential work is building the infrastructure that allows meaning to survive the journey.